Let me tell you something, my friends. People always ask me, why is the United States afraid of India? And the answer is simple. India is no longer the underdog. India is the powerhouse. When people talk about the strength of a nation, they often think about military power, about weapons, or about the size of the economy. But the real power, the real unstoppable force is the people. And this is where India has something that makes even the United States sit up, watch carefully, and yes, even feel a little afraid. India has the youngest, most dynamic population in the world. More than 60% of India's people are under the age of 35. This means a nation filled with energy, filled with new ideas, filled with ambition. While other countries are struggling with aging populations, with shrinking workforces, India is entering its golden era with youth at the center. And this is not just numbers, my friends. This is human energy. Millions of young minds hungry to prove themselves. Millions of hands ready to build. Millions of voices ready to lead. The United States sees this, and it knows what it means. America itself once had this advantage. In the post-war years, when its young population built industries, drove innovation, and created the American dream. But now, America is facing the challenge of an aging society, where growth slows down, healthcare burdens rise, and fewer young people are available to carry the weight. Meanwhile, India is standing tall with the exact opposite reality. For the next few decades, India will be the home of the largest working-age population in the world. Imagine the power of that, hundreds of millions of people entering the workforce, driving productivity, creating companies, innovating, building cities, building technologies, and consuming products. Every multinational corporation, every global investor, every government knows this truth. The country with the youngest and most skilled workforce will dominate the future economy. And this is exactly why the US keeps a sharp eye on India. But it's not just about sheer numbers. Numbers without direction are useless. What makes India's youth different is their hunger and their resilience. These are young men and women who grew up with challenges, who understand struggle, who are not afraid of hard work. They are not waiting for handouts. They are ready to hustle, ready to create opportunities, ready to shape their destiny. This is the kind of spirit that built Silicon Valley, that built Hollywood, that built the American dream itself. And now this spirit is alive and burning in India. The US can sense it, and deep down it knows that this energy can reshape the global order. Another reason why India's population power worries the US is the scale of talent emerging in fields that matter most for the future. We are not just talking about labor. We are talking about leaders in artificial intelligence, engineers in space exploration, scientists in nuclear research, doctors, entrepreneurs, and tech geniuses. The world's biggest tech companies, Google, Microsoft, Adobe, are being led by Indian-born CEOs. This is no coincidence. It is the direct result of India's young population being educated, ambitious, and global in mindset. The US sees this brain power and understands that the days of America holding the monopoly on innovation are over. India is not following anymore. India is leading in many places. And remember this: population power is also political power. When a country has more people, it has more influence in international organizations, more weight in global negotiations, more demand in markets. India's population makes it a consumer powerhouse as well as a producer of talent. Every company in the world knows that if we want growth, they need India's young consumers. This creates leverage. This creates bargaining power. And this creates fear in those who once dictated terms to smaller economies. Now the table has turned, and the US must treat India as an equal because India's population makes it impossible to ignore. So the reason the US is afraid of India is not because of what India is today, but because of what India is becoming tomorrow. A nation of the young is a nation of possibility, a nation of momentum, a nation of unstoppable force. The United States knows this, and it knows that once this youth power is fully unleashed, no one will be able to outpace India. That is the reason behind the fear. That is the reason behind the respect. That is the reason India's population is not just a statistic but a superpower. When we talk about power in the modern world, nothing speaks louder than the strength of an economy. It is the backbone of influence, the foundation of security, and the true measure of progress. And this is exactly why the United States keeps a careful watch on India. Over the past few decades, India has transformed itself from being seen as a struggling developing nation to one of the fastest growing economies in the world. This rapid rise is not just a short-term boost, it is a long-term momentum that shows no signs of slowing down. America knows this. It understands that if India continues on this path, the balance of global economic power will tilt, and that tilt will not be in America's favor. India is now the fifth largest economy in the world, and projected to climb higher in the coming years, potentially becoming the third largest. This is not a small achievement. Just imagine the journey. A nation that was once dismissed as poor and dependent is now standing at the top ranks of the global economic ladder. Every year, India's GDP grows at a pace that outshines many advanced economies, and unlike some countries whose growth is fragile or dependent on external powers, India's growth is fueled by strong domestic demand, a booming middle class, and an entrepreneurial spirit that refuses to quit. That combination is what makes the US uneasy. Think about the scale of India's marketplace. More than 1 billion people, and within them, a massive rising middle class hungry for better lifestyles, better technology, better services, and better opportunities. Every global company from Apple to Amazon, from Tesla to Walmart, sees India not just as another country but as the next frontier for growth. When the US realizes that India is attracting investments, building industries, and becoming the manufacturing hub of the future, it understands that the old rules of dominance are changing. The United States cannot simply dictate terms anymore. It must compete. It must negotiate. It must respect India's economic power. Another layer of strength lies in India's resilience. The US economy is powerful, no doubt, but it is also heavily dependent on debt and global trade imbalances. India, on the other hand, has shown again and again that it can withstand global crises, whether it was the financial meltdown of 2008, the pandemic, or fluctuations in oil prices. India bounced back faster than many expected. This resilience comes from the diversity of its economy. Agriculture, services, manufacturing, and technology. India does not put all its eggs in one basket. That diversity creates stability, and stability is what scares competitors. What truly makes India's economic rise a reason for American concern is the strategic independence it brings. A strong economy means a strong voice. With every passing year, India becomes less dependent on aid, less dependent on handouts, and more capable of setting its own path. It can trade with whoever it wants. It can reject unfair deals. It can stand tall in organizations like the World Trade Organization or G20 and say, "We are not here to follow, we are here to lead." The UN understands that economic independence translates into political independence, and that is not something America can easily control. There is also the future factor, the potential of India's economy to drive global growth. Economists agree that India will be one of the main engines of the world economy in the coming decades. With a growing skilled workforce, a booming tech sector, and a manufacturing base that is expanding rapidly, India is positioning itself as not just a participant in the global economy but a leader. America knows that the future giants in business, the future leaders in innovation, and the future hubs of production may not be in Silicon Valley or Wall Street, but in Bengaluru, Hyderabad, and Mumbai. This is why the US is afraid. It is not about what India has already achieved, though that alone is impressive. It is about what India is on track to achieve: a $5 trillion economy, a global innovation hub, a manufacturing powerhouse, and a consumer market that no corporation can afford to ignore. This is the future America sees when it looks at India, and deep down it knows that when a nation combines population power with economic muscle, it becomes unstoppable. So the fear is not about weakness. The fear is about strength. The United States fears India's economic rise because it represents competition, it represents independence, and it represents the shifting of power away from the old world order. And once that shift is complete, no one can turn it back. That is why America watches India's economic muscle with both respect and unease, because it is the sign of a new global giant standing tall. If there is one force that defines power in the 21st century, it is not just military might or economic size, it is technology and innovation. The nations that dominate technology dominate the future, because technology shapes economies, industries, communications, and even wars. This is exactly why the United States keeps a close eye on India. For years, America enjoyed the reputation of being the hub of innovation, the land of Silicon Valley, the leader in artificial intelligence, space exploration, biotechnology, and digital revolutions. But now it sees another country rising fast in this arena, and that country is India. What makes the US uncomfortable is that India is no longer just catching up, it is building its own path and competing at the highest level. The same story unfolds in the field of technology and science. Indian scientists are advancing in nuclear research, renewable energy, pharmaceuticals, biotechnology, and artificial intelligence. The young population is not only working in the US for companies like Google, Microsoft, and Meta, but also building homegrown startups in India that are competing globally. Bangalore is now called the Silicon Valley of the East, and the speed at which startups are growing in fintech, edtech, health tech, and AI is staggering. The US sees this and realizes that innovation is spreading globally, and India is one of the leading hubs driving this wave. One of the biggest signals of India's growing technological influence is the number of global companies led by Indian-origin CEOs. Sundar Pichai at Google, Satya Nadella at Microsoft, Shantanu Narayan at Adobe. The list continues to grow. This is not a coincidence, but India's technological power is not just about achievements. It is also about independence. India has shown that it is willing to develop its own technologies instead of depending on foreign powers. From building indigenous defense systems to developing its own supercomputers and 5G networks, India is creating self-reliance in critical sectors. This is dangerous for the US because technological dependence has always been one way America maintained influence over other nations. If India builds its own systems, it cannot be controlled or pressured as easily. And technology is not just about machines or devices, it is about the mindset. The mindset of innovation, of solving problems creatively, of turning obstacles into opportunities. India's young population has embraced this mindset fully. They are coding, designing, inventing, and experimenting at a massive scale. They are participating in the global conversation of the future. When America sees this cultural shift, it knows that India is not going to remain a follower. It is becoming a leader. The truth is simple. Innovation is power. And India is proving, step by step, that it has the brains, the drive, and the determination to be a global leader in technology. That is why the United States is cautious, sometimes even nervous, because the rise of India in technology means the rise of a competitor, a rival, and perhaps even a successor to America's technological dominance. The future is being written not only in Silicon Valley, but also in Bengaluru, Hyderabad, and New Delhi, and the US. When we talk about what makes a nation truly respected, it is not only its economy or its technology, but also the strength of its military. A powerful military is the shield that protects a nation's progress and the sword that ensures its sovereignty. And this is exactly why the United States, despite having the most advanced military in the world, cannot ignore India. In fact, it knows that India's military power is no longer something that can be dismissed or underestimated. India has become one of the largest and most capable military forces on the planet, and this strength is a major reason the US watches India with both caution and respect. India has the second largest standing army in the world, with more than 1 million active personnel and millions more in reserve. But this is not just about numbers. It is about experience and determination. Indian soldiers have fought in the toughest terrains, the deserts of Rajasthan, the icy mountains of the Himalayas, the jungles of the Northeast, and even peacekeeping missions under the United Nations banner across the globe. This kind of battlefield experience creates a force that is not only large, but also battle-hardened. America knows that a nation with such an army cannot be intimidated easily. India has also invested heavily in modernizing its armed forces, from fighter jets like the Rafale, to advanced missile systems such as Agni and BrahMos. India is equipping itself with cutting-edge technology. Its navy is expanding with aircraft carriers, submarines and destroyers to secure the Indian Ocean, a region vital for global trade routes. Its air force is among the most powerful in Asia, capable of defending against threats and projecting power when necessary, and its army continues to innovate with new weapons, training and strategies. America sees this modernization and understands that India is not a sleeping giant. It is a giant that is waking up fully prepared to defend its interests. Another aspect of India's military strength is its self-reliance in defense production. India is increasingly building its own tanks, aircraft, warships, and missiles. This reduces dependency on foreign powers and gives India more control over its security. For decades, America used defense exports as a tool of influence, but India's push for indigenous defense systems weakens that leverage. A nation that builds its own weapons cannot be easily manipulated. This independence in defense makes India even more formidable in the eyes of the US. But perhaps the most powerful element of India's military is not weapons or numbers. It is the willpower of its people. The Indian armed forces are respected not just for their size or strength, but for their discipline, their honor, and their commitment to defending the nation at all costs. This spirit cannot be bought, and it cannot be defeated easily. History has shown that nations with strong morale and unity in their armed forces are incredibly difficult to conquer or control. The US recognizes this spirit in India, and it knows that military confrontation is not a path it can afford to consider. So the reality is clear. India is not a weak state that others can pressure. It is a nation with one of the strongest militaries in the world, a nuclear power with modern weapons, strategic geography, and a proud, disciplined armed force. The United States is aware of this fact, and it shapes its policies carefully when dealing with India. That fear, or let's call it respect mixed with caution, comes from the knowledge that India's military is not just a defensive shield, it is a statement to the world. India is strong, India is ready, and India will not bow down. True strength is not only measured in numbers, weapons, or money. True strength comes from the willpower of a nation, to stand on its own feet, to make its own decisions, and to remain independent in the face of pressure. And this is where India has something that makes the United States uneasy: an iron will, a determination to follow its own path. India is not a country that bends easily. It does not bow down to outside powers. And the spirit of independence is what truly sets it apart on the world stage. America knows this, and it is one of the biggest reasons why it is cautious when dealing with India. India's foreign policy has always been guided by the principle of sovereignty. From the days of independence, India chose not to align blindly with any global superpower. During the Cold War, when the world was divided between the US and the Soviet Union, India charted its own path through the non-aligned movement. That decision itself showed the world that India values independence above all else. Even today, India continues that tradition. It makes decisions based on its national interests, not on the approval of Washington, Moscow, or Beijing. This kind of independence is rare, and it frustrates powerful countries that are used to controlling others. India's independence is not only political, but also cultural. India is a civilization that has existed for thousands of years, with its own traditions, values, and philosophies. This deep cultural foundation gives India a strong identity that cannot be erased or dominated. While many countries often bend under the influence of Western culture or policies, India holds on proudly to its roots, while still engaging with the world. This balance of tradition and modernity gives India confidence, and that confidence translates into willpower on the global stage. The US understands this and realizes that India cannot be easily molded to fit into its vision of the world. Another dimension of willpower lies in India's ability to withstand external pressure without collapsing. Time and again, India has faced challenges, wars, economic sanctions, border conflicts, and diplomatic isolation attempts. Yet each time, India has emerged stronger. At the heart of all this is the willpower of the Indian people. This is a nation that fought for independence against one of the most powerful empires in history and won through resilience and sacrifice. That spirit has not faded. It lives on in every decision, in every policy, and in the national character. The United States sees this spirit and knows that India is not a country that can be dictated to. It is a nation that must be engaged with, negotiated with, and respected. So when we ask why the US is afraid of India, one of the deepest reasons is this. India's independence and willpower make it unpredictable, untouchable, and unbreakable. A nation that cannot be controlled is a nation that must be respected. And India, with its courage to stand tall and its determination to remain free in its choices, has proven again and again that it belongs among the strongest voices in the world. The US knows this truth, and it is exactly why it watches India with both caution and admiration.